The game that definitively established and verified the split timeline theory would have to be The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, the first original game released for the GameCube console. Series director Eiji Anomura has gone on record stating that this game takes place in a dimension alternate to many of the games released beforehand. I should point out that Anomura had replaced Shigeru Miyamoto as the one really in charge of the Zelda game's development, and he was much more receptive to the split timeline theory. I'll get into more detail when I recap the timeline. The point is, this game takes place in a world where Hyrule doesn't seem to exist at all. There's a legend telling of how the land once existed and was saved by a legendary hero from a great evil, only to have the evil reappear many years later, the hero not returning and the land disappearing. The fact that they only mention the Hero of Time in this legend, obviously referencing Ocarina of Time, and the hero's disappearance suggests that this is the timeline that Link was taken away from by Zelda at the end of Ocarina. So this would be the first official game to take place in what's commonly called the adult timeline. One of the big changes in this game is the graphics, which went to a cel-shaded system and is a direct contrast to the darker graphics that the original demo of this game displayed when it was introduced at the 2000 Space World Convention. The brighter cartoon-like style added to arguments that both Zelda and Nintendo are catering too much to kids, but later plot points in the game really contradict that claim. The game begins in a world consisting of islands in a vast sea, and your character has just come of age, which means you'll have to dress as the legendary hero on your birthday. Hey, don't knock it, kid, you have no idea how many girls you'll get wearing that thing. Your big day is interrupted when this oversized chicken drops the leader of a pirate gang named Tetra on your home island and then grabs your little sister instead. So you hitch a ride with the pirates to rescue her, which basically counts as the first mission, I think. The format is a little different from previous games, as we'll see. But upon reaching her, the chicken, okay, the Helmarock, tosses you into the sea, where you're rescued by a talking boat called the King of the Red Lions, who tells you the evil Ganon has returned and only you can stop him. And thus the real game begins, where you travel across a vast ocean from island to island. To me, this is a good argument against the claims that all Zelda games are just retreads of one another. Yes, there are similarities in this one, but this sailing aspect really adds a new dimension. There's a whole new sense of adventure as you travel across open waters, looking ahead to what approaches on the horizon. Like in Ocarina, the time changes from day to night, and there's a real serene setting. Well, except for the storms, pirates, whirlwinds, and the piranha peahats! Good freaking night, what is wrong with these game designers? The giant peahats in Ocarina were bad enough, but now we have huge glaring fish that fly with propellers and chase you? How much more nightmare fuel can they create? As you travel, you have to draw out your map, or rather your chart as sea language goes, with the help of some crotchety old fish who also give you hints to the islands. It's at least more tolerable than having to deal with, no, why? Why did they have to bring him back? Yes, you once again have to deal with the annoying pissant Tingle. I'll get to him later. The gameplay is pretty much the same as Ocarina and Majora's Mask, with the 3D perspective and the numerous side quests. Once again, music plays a huge role in the game. In this case, you use a baton called the Wind Waker to conduct musical notes that allow you to change the wind's direction and warp you from island to island, among other things. It's a little trickier to work than in previous games, as you have to use the GameCube controller's C-stick in the right directions when the melody bar moves along the center. It could take a few times to get it right for newcomers. You first need to find the 3 pearls connected to the gods Din, Nehru, and Feore, which is similar to your first quests in Link to the Past and Ocarina. Once you get them and place them on their correct statues, they reveal the Tower of the Gods, where you find the Master Sword to take down Ganon. And the sword doesn't work worth crap! So you now find out through the spirit of Hyrule's old king, who's been the one talking to you through the boat all this time, that in order to stop Ganon years ago, the gods buried all of Hyrule underwater like Atlantis, and your home islands are actually the tips of the Old Land's mountains. So they basically wiped out all of the old civilization to save the world. Kind of dark and depressing. But now Ganon is back, and not only has the sword lost its power, but you claiming it has actually restored Ganon's power. You know, now that I think of it, it seems like Ganon would never become a serious threat in some of these games if we'd just left the Master Sword alone! Now you have to get 2 creatures you met earlier in the game to replace the sages of Earth and Wind that Ganon's forces slaughtered to restore the sword's power, then find the 8 pieces of the Triforce of Courage scattered throughout the sea. This is another aspect slightly different from many previous games, because there aren't actually as many dungeons to go through. You do need to go through a couple to awake the sages, but the Triforce pieces are actually hidden underwater, and you have to just find them and fish them out. This is where Tingle comes into play, as he charges you ungodly amounts of money to decipher charts that tell you where the pieces are located. Man, and people say NBA tickets are too expensive. Once you restore the sword and the Triforce, you now have to once again rescue Zelda from Ganon. Oh yeah, Tetra, the leader of the pirates, it turns out she's the last descendant of Zelda. Coinky-dink, huh? Ganon goes into this whole spiel about how he wanted to conquer Hyrule because it was so much better than the harsh desert he grew up in. He uses you to bring forth the Triforce, and he's going to use it to rise the land back to the surface, but... So the king instead commands the Triforce to flood the land for good and bury them with it. Thus, you and Zelda must now defeat Ganon in order to escape. Yeah, I give the game credit for actually having this Zelda assist you using your bow and arrow. Wait, Zelda fighting with a bow and arrow? Where have I seen that before? Jeez, I know how many times we've beaten this guy, but that's a pretty hardcore way to finish it off. Between jamming the sword right through his skull and the king talking about how he has to sacrifice himself and his land to save the upper world, this ending's pretty dark and somber. The king's last act is to send you and Tetra safely back to the surface where the pirates rescue you, and so the game ends with you and the pirates sailing off, supposedly to find a new land that you can found a new Hyrule on. The Legend of Zelda the Wind Waker is actually pretty epic and complex in its own right. There are a number of new twists to go with some of the more common traits of the previous games, but what really stands out is the change in tone as it progresses if you stop to examine it. What starts as a bright, cheery setting with the prospects of exploring the unknown takes a dramatic turn in revealing that your character's world is essentially post-apocalypse. People who grew up with the land of Hyrule may be taken aback to realize it no longer really exists here. Maybe that's why many gladly embrace the split timeline theory, since they can believe the land and all of its people still exist in the other setting, even if it can get confusing trying to play Switch game where. And it's going to get more confusing with the next couple of games. In fact, next time we'll be looking at a game that might not even be a part of Zelda's official canon.